The galaxy was old, filled with empires that believed they were eternal. For thousands of years alien rulers had fought each other, made treaties, broken them, and continued their endless cycle of power. To them, humanity was nothing. Earth was a small blue planet on the edge of the stars, too young and too weak to matter. While the great empires built cities the size of moons, humans were still learning how to leave their own solar system. That is what the galaxy thought. But whispers began to spread, and those whispers carried fear. Entire fleets, proud alien warships armed with weapons of unimaginable power, were vanishing. Not destroyed in battle, not crippled and left floating, but gone without warning, erased from space. The survivors, very few in number, spoke of shadows in the void. They claimed to see ships that were not ships, shapes that bent the stars themselves. They said these hunters struck without warning, fired no visible weapons, and then disappeared into darkness. The aliens called them the dark matter warships. At first, the rulers laughed. They said it was rumor, a story spread by cowards who had failed in battle. But the rumors did not stop. They grew louder, spreading from one system to another, until fear began to take root in the hearts of even the most powerful commanders. Something was hunting them, and they did not understand what it was. The High Council of the Galactic Core gathered to discuss the threat. Their chambers, larger than any city on Earth, were filled with voices that had ruled for millennia. One leader, a creature made of crystal and light, slammed its form against the floor and declared that humans could never have such power. Another, a scaled warlord with 6 burning eyes, roared that it must be a trick of another empire, a new weapon kept secret. Yet deep inside the council records, hidden reports showed wreckage drifting in the void. Metal was cut clean as if sliced by invisible blades. Energy cores were drained without a single trace. This was no ordinary weapon. This was something beyond physics as the galaxy understood it. The word human began to be spoken with unease. Long ago, the galaxy had ignored Earth, considering humans noisy but harmless. Now, silence spread whenever their name was mentioned. In the far reaches of space, merchants whispered that humans had touched the fabric of the universe itself. They had discovered how to bend dark matter, the invisible skeleton of all creation. If it was true, then Earth held the key to weapons no alien mind could imagine. Still, many refused to believe. They called humans arrogant dreamers, primitives who could not even match the oldest ships of the core. But when a mighty fleet of the Circan Dominion vanished without returning a single distress call, laughter turned into dread. The galaxy trembled, though no war had yet begun. In hidden space stations, soldiers whispered to each other. They spoke of black shapes gliding between stars. They spoke of silence before death. They spoke of humans. Fear spread faster than truth. No one had proof, yet no one felt safe. The council tried to control the story, banning talk of Earth, threatening punishment for those who spread rumors. But fear cannot be silenced. The more they tried to hide the truth, the more the whispers grew. Dark matter warships, the name rolled through the galaxy like thunder. No one knew where they came from, no one knew how many there were, and no one knew when they would strike again. In the shadows of the void, humanity was watching. Humanity was waiting. And soon, the galaxy would learn that the weakest species they had ignored for centuries had become the greatest danger they would ever face. The great chamber of the Galactic High Council floated at the very center of the galaxy, a fortress of silver and living stone built around a star. For thousands of years, this was where rulers of empires gathered to decide the fate of billions. Here, wars had been declared, treaties signed, and species erased. But now the chamber did not echo with pride, it shook with fear. Alien leaders filled the seats, each one ancient and powerful, yet their voices carried doubt. They argued loudly, their words overlapping, their fear spilling into anger. At the center of the hall, the High Speaker, a towering figure of shifting crystal, called for silence. Reports continue to arrive, the speaker said, its body glowing like fire through glass. Entire fleets have vanished at the edges of human space. Ships destroyed without warning, without trace. Survivors speak of weapons that do not exist in our science. And always, always, they whisper the same word, humans. The chamber erupted in chaos. One warlord of the Circan Dominion slammed his clawed hands against the table, his 6 burning eyes glowing with rage. Lies. Humans are insects. They crawl on a single world and pretend to be strong. This is the work of another empire trying to spread fear. From across the chamber, a soft but dangerous voice replied. It came from the Empress of the ZHYR, a being with wings of living shadow. And yet it was your Dominion fleet that vanished, was it not? 500 ships, gone in silence. No distress signals, no wreckage, only whispers. Tell me, Circan, who hunts your soldiers if not these humans? The warlord roared, but he had no answer. Others began to speak, their voices sharp with unease. A counselor of the Kroll species, a machine intelligence older than most stars, spoke in cold tones. We have recovered fragments from the battlefield. Metal cut as if by invisible blades. Energy cores drained to emptiness. These are not weapons we know. Our sensors recorded no light, no heat, no particle trails. And yet destruction was absolute. A shiver moved through the chamber. If the machines themselves, masters of logic and detection, could not explain it, then the truth was worse than rumor. The counselors turned to one another, their arguments now edged with fear. How could humans have such power? One asked. They are new to the stars. Barely a century ago they struggled to leave their own system. Another voice answered bitterly. That is why they are dangerous. While we grew lazy with our old weapons, they searched for something new. They studied what we ignored. The High Speaker's crystal form pulsed brighter. Our intelligence confirms what we feared. Humans are not using ordinary matter. They have learned to shape the invisible web of dark matter itself. With it, they cloak their ships, they strike with blades of gravity, they drain energy from our weapons. They have turned the skeleton of the universe into a weapon. The words fell like thunder. Many counselors refused to believe it. They shouted, they denied, they called it impossible. But deep inside, they all knew it explained everything. The survivors' stories, the vanished fleets, the silence before destruction. It all made sense, and that truth filled them with terror. One by one, their pride cracked. The counselors began to ask the real question. What if humans grow stronger? What if they do not stop with defense? What if they seek to rule? In the shadows of the chamber, fear became a living thing. Some demanded immediate war. Crush Earth now before they finish their weapons. Burn their worlds and end this threat. Others argued against it. No. Attack them, and we may fall into their trap. They may be stronger than we know. Let us wait, let us watch. But waiting only meant more fleets would vanish, and each vanished fleet fed the legend. The name of humans spread like fire. Merchants carried it in hushed voices, smugglers whispered it in the dark, even slaves began to speak it with hope. Humanity had become a storm no one could stop, and the galaxy trembled at its approach. The High Speaker raised its crystal arms for silence once more. We face an enemy we do not understand, it declared. But we cannot ignore them. If humans have truly learned to master dark matter, then the balance of the galaxy is broken. We will send spies, we will send assassins, we will send fleets. But mark my words, the age of human weakness is over. If they rise, it will be the end of us all. A heavy silence filled the chamber. For the first time in 10,000 years, the rulers of the galaxy felt powerless. They had mocked Earth, but now Earth had become their nightmare. And in that silence, each leader felt the same thought, a thought they dared not speak aloud. What if it was already too late? For centuries the galaxy had ignored Earth. To the old empires, humanity was noisy, ambitious, and curious but weak, just another young species crawling from its cradle. When alien explorers first observed humans, they saw nothing special, only a primitive people who had learned flight and fire too late compared to ancient civilizations. Reports were filed, data stored, and then forgotten. The galaxy moved on, certain that Earth would never rise high enough to matter. But humans were never like others. They carried within them a strange hunger, a drive that no empire could understand. Where other species accepted limits, humans broke them. Where others feared the unknown, humans chased it. And while the galaxy turned away, Earth began to climb. They studied every fragment of knowledge they could find, from the old ruins left on forgotten moons to the faintest signals drifting in the cosmic dark. They asked questions that other species had stopped asking long ago. Why is the universe shaped the way it is? What lies hidden in the shadows between stars? Why does most of existence remain invisible to the eye? They searched for answers in the fabric of the cosmos itself, and there, in the silent ocean of equations and experiments, humanity found something astonishing. They discovered the great unseen, dark matter. To the empires, dark matter was a mystery to be noted in textbooks, a curiosity too complex to use. It was invisible, untouchable, and therefore unworthy of effort. But to humans it was a frontier, a challenge calling to them. For generations, Earth's brightest minds built theories and machines, instruments so delicate they could feel the whisper of particles moving through the void. They mapped the unseen skeleton of reality and learned how to touch it. At first, their experiments were small, bending light around objects, making matter lighter or heavier for a heartbeat. Then came cloaking fields, entire structures hidden from sensors. The galaxy did not notice when a small human ship crossed a system unseen, its hull wrapped in shadows. The galaxy did not notice when human stations began to float in the dark, invisible to every scan. And the galaxy did not notice when Earth's fleets stopped building ordinary ships. Humanity was building something different, something no one else believed possible. They forged warships not from steel alone but from the bones of the universe itself. Their engines folded space along dark matter currents, their weapons bent gravity into blades, and their shields drained energy instead of blocking it. They became predators of the void, invisible hunters moving through shadows. While the empires were laughing, humans were creating the most dangerous machines in history. It was not done easily. Entire generations sacrificed, countless scientists failed, and many lives were lost to experiments gone wrong. But humans had always been willing to pay the price of progress. Failure only drove them harder. They worked in silence, their programs hidden, their breakthroughs buried deep underground where no alien eye could see. When alien spies came, humans showed them only outdated rockets and slow ships, smiling as if they were centuries behind. The empires believed the lie. They turned away, confident Earth was harmless. All the while, the shadows of the dark matter fleet grew stronger. Commanders trained in secret, learning how to fight wars in ways no alien could imagine. They studied not only physics but also the psychology of predators, how to strike from silence and disappear before the prey could react. They called their ships hunters because that is what they were. When the first of these warships was completed, it did not shine like alien cruisers. It was not covered in gold, jewels, or glowing towers of energy. It was silent, blacker than the space around it, its outline impossible to follow. To sensors it did not exist. To the naked eye it was a shadow. But inside, it carried weapons that bent the laws of creation. A single shot from its cannons could slice a battleship in half without leaving heat or smoke. Its hull could vanish from scans even as it struck. Its engines rode waves of invisible matter, faster and quieter than light. The humans who stood upon its bridge did not see themselves as conquerors. They saw themselves as survivors. For they knew the galaxy would never allow Earth to grow free. They had studied history, the endless wars of empires, the chains placed upon weaker species. Humanity understood that to survive among predators, they must become predators themselves. So they chose to rise in secret. They built fleets in silence, scattered across hidden bases carved into asteroids and moons. They swore oaths of secrecy, knowing that one day the truth would come out, and when it did, humanity must be ready. And when the first alien fleet entered their space with arrogance and fire, humanity was ready. In that moment, the galaxy discovered the truth it had ignored for so long. The weak species they had mocked, the children of Earth they had dismissed, had risen in the shadows. Humanity had mastered the skeleton of the universe. Humanity had created warships of dark matter. And humanity was no longer prey. They were hunters in the night, and the galaxy would soon learn to fear their name. The Circan Dominion had ruled for 10,000 years with iron claws and burning pride, their fleets unmatched in size and cruelty. When whispers of human warships spread, the Circan laughed. They called it a joke, a story invented by cowards. To prove their power, they gathered a massive fleet of 500 ships, each one armed with weapons that had conquered countless worlds. They marched toward human space with arrogance, broadcasting messages across the stars, declaring that Earth would kneel or be destroyed. Across the galaxy, billions of eyes turned to watch. This would be the test. If humans were truly strong, they would survive. If not, they would be crushed and forgotten. The Circan fleet entered the edge of human territory with banners of war burning bright. Their ships spread across the void in formation, sensors reaching, weapons ready. They expected resistance, desperate human fleets rushing to defend their home. But space was silent. No ships appeared to challenge them, no defenses fired, no signals were sent. The Circan commanders laughed, believing humans too afraid to show themselves. Then the silence changed. At first, it was nothing more than a ripple in the dark, a strange emptiness on their scanners. The officers frowned, adjusted their systems, and reported glitches. But the glitches spread. Ships vanished from sensor maps though they were still present by eye. Communications cut out for seconds at a time. Then, without warning, one of the great cruisers exploded into shards of metal. There had been no flash, no missile, no beam. One moment it was whole, the next it was gone. Panic rippled through the fleet. Orders screamed across channels, ships turned to search, weapons fired blindly into the void. But there was nothing to see. Another ship fell, then another, sliced apart by forces they could not detect. It was as if invisible predators stalked them, cutting through steel like paper. The commanders shouted for unity, tried to regroup, but fear spread faster than discipline. Some captains fled into the darkness, others fired on their own allies in confusion. The battlefield became chaos. In the shadows, the humans moved like hunters. Their warships, cloaked in dark matter, glided unseen. They struck with weapons that left no trail, blades of gravity that tore ships apart from within. They drained energy cores until engines died, leaving vessels adrift and helpless. To the Circan, it was like fighting ghosts. They fired thousands of shots, unleashing storms of plasma and radiation, but their weapons passed harmlessly through empty space. The hunters were already gone, striking from another angle. Hours passed, and the mighty fleet crumbled. Hundreds of ships that had once brought terror to the galaxy were reduced to silence and wreckage. A few survivors escaped, fleeing faster than light, their minds broken by what they had seen. They would tell stories of shadows in the void, of invisible killers that struck without warning. The humans did not chase them. They let them flee, because fear was more powerful than destruction. Fear would carry the message farther than any fleet could. When the last Circan ship exploded, silence returned to the battlefield. Where 500 ships had once flown, now only broken metal drifted among the stars. The humans remained unseen, their ships cloaked, their weapons silent. They did not send a message, did not boast of victory, did not announce themselves to the galaxy. They simply vanished back into the dark, leaving the wreckage as their statement. Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. The invincible Circan fleet had been destroyed without a single human loss. Entire empires trembled. Merchants whispered of shadows, smugglers spoke of warships that could not be seen, and slaves began to sing songs of hope. For the first time in ages, the rulers of the galaxy felt fear. They realized the humans were not rumors, not myths, but a rising storm. In council chambers, leaders shouted at each other in panic. Some demanded immediate war, others demanded surrender before it was too late. But deep down they all knew the truth. The balance of power had shifted. A single battle had rewritten the rules of the galaxy. Humanity had drawn first blood. The galaxy had expected Earth to fall, but instead it was the empires who had been humbled. The first strike was over, but it was only the beginning. Humanity had revealed the edge of its power, and the galaxy now understood what hunted them in the dark. The whisper of fear had become reality. And as the survivors screamed their warnings, a new truth echoed across the stars. The age of human weakness was over, and the hunters had arrived. The destruction of the Circan fleet shook the galaxy like an earthquake. For ages, the Dominion had been the symbol of fear, but now 500 of their warships were gone, erased in silence by the humans. No one could deny the truth anymore. The dark matter warships were real, and they belonged to Earth. Panic spread through the stars, empires whispering to one another, rulers demanding action. At first, they tried to hide their fear, claiming it was a trick or an accident, but the survivors' screams told a different story. They spoke of invisible hunters, of ships that cut through them without being seen, of weapons that killed without light or sound. The galaxy trembled. The rulers could not allow this threat to grow. If humanity had truly mastered such power, then every empire's throne was in danger. So they united, not out of friendship, but out of desperation. Rivals who had fought for centuries set aside their hatred. The Circan, the ZHYR, the Kroll machines, and dozens of others gathered their fleets into one armada, larger than anything seen in history. More than 3,000 ships armed with the deadliest weapons known to the galaxy prepared to march against Earth. They told themselves it would be simple. Humans were young, their numbers small, their colonies few. The empires were old, vast, and powerful. The combined armada was unstoppable, or so they believed. As their fleets gathered, their leaders shouted speeches filled with pride. "We will crush Earth before their shadows spread," cried the Circan warlord. "We will burn their homeworld and scatter their ashes," hissed the ZHYR empress. The Kroll machines spoke with cold precision, promising to erase human data, to wipe their knowledge from existence. Together they launched their fleets, a storm of metal and fire moving toward human space. Across the galaxy, countless species watched, holding their breath. Some prayed for humanity to win, hoping their chains might finally break. Others prayed for the empires, fearing what humans might become if they triumphed. All eyes turned to the edge of Earth's territory, where the greatest battle in history was about to begin. The armada arrived, filling the void with light. Thousands of ships spread out in formation, their weapons glowing like suns. They expected to see human fleets rushing to defend their worlds, but once again, the humans were silent. No signals, no fleets, no cries for mercy. Only the darkness of space. The commanders grew uneasy. Then the shadows moved. At first it was small, a ripple across sensors, a distortion of light. Then came the strike. Human warships appeared from nothing, cloaked in dark matter, gliding between the alien armada like wolves among sheep. They did not attack with noise or fire. They cut silently, cleanly, ships vanishing one by one before the empires could react. Alien captains screamed orders, unleashing storms of plasma and radiation, but the humans were already gone, hidden in shadows, striking from behind. Panic tore through the mighty fleet. Thousands of ships fired in all directions, but most struck their allies instead of their enemy. Explosions rippled across their own lines, chaos consuming their order. And through it all, the human warships moved with terrifying grace. To them, this was not a battle. It was a hunt. They chose their targets carefully, cutting command ships first, isolating groups of enemies, draining energy cores until entire squadrons floated helpless. The aliens had numbers, but numbers meant nothing against ghosts. Every minute, more of their fleet was destroyed. For the humans, it was their first true war, their first test against the galaxy. On their bridges, commanders gave no grand speeches. They spoke quietly, their orders precise. Target engines, disable weapons, move to next. They fought like predators, efficient and cold, because they knew mercy would bring their extinction. Hours stretched into days. The great armada of 3,000 ships was broken, scattered across the void. Some fled, some surrendered, but most were destroyed. When the battle ended, the humans remained, cloaked in silence once more. They had not lost a single warship. The galaxy could hardly believe it. The empires that once ruled with arrogance had been humiliated, their greatest armada shattered. Billions across the stars whispered the same words: humanity has risen. The war had begun, and it was no longer a question of if the empires would fall, but when. Humanity had shown their power, and now the galaxy would never be the same. The rulers had thought to crush Earth with overwhelming force, but instead they had fed the legend. They had given humanity the chance to prove themselves, and humanity had answered with victory. Now fear spread deeper than ever. The slaves of the empires whispered Earth's name as hope. The rulers whispered it as terror. And in the dark, the human fleets prepared for the next strike. The war of survival had become a war of destiny, and the galaxy trembled before the hunters of Earth. The galaxy had believed numbers would save them, that thousands of ships could crush the shadows from Earth, but now their broken armada drifted as wreckage across human space. The survivors fled with fear carved into their hearts, carrying stories of hunters in the dark. Yet the empires were stubborn. They had ruled for millennia, and pride would not let them surrender. If brute force failed, then they would turn to trickery, science, and desperation. Across the stars, secret councils met in hidden chambers. Old enemies traded forbidden knowledge, crafting weapons designed not for conquest but for survival against humanity. They built gravity traps to distort space, fields meant to drag human ships into nets where cloaks could not hide. They unleashed AI war machines that could think faster than any crew, cold intelligence designed to predict invisible movements. They bred biomonsters, living ships with senses not bound by light or sound, creatures that could feel the ripple of mass in the void. And still, the humans adapted. The first gravity trap was sprung at the edge of the Orion cluster, where an entire alien fleet waited, certain they would finally catch their prey. But when the shadows came, the trap twisted back on itself. Human warships danced through the folds of gravity as if they had written the rules. The alien fleet was crushed by their own weapon, their ships folded into fragments before they could fire a shot. The AI hunters came next, machines of perfect logic, able to calculate trillions of possibilities in a second. They tracked shadows, mapped patterns, predicted human strikes. For a brief moment, they succeeded, forcing a battle where humans could not escape unseen. But the humans had learned long ago that logic was not enough. They fought with unpredictability, with creativity, with chaos that no machine could measure. They lured the AI fleets into false victories, then struck from impossible angles, crippling the machines with tactics that defied their predictions. The biomonsters were unleashed, terrifying creatures of flesh and void, their senses reaching across dimensions. For the first time, humans faced something that could see them even when cloaked. Battles became fierce, the shadows hunted by monsters that could smell their engines. Entire human squadrons were forced into direct combat, something they had always avoided. Yet, in the end, humanity learned again. They dissected the monsters, studied their senses, and turned their own biology against them. Soon, the hunters of flesh were silenced, their remains drifting alongside broken alien ships. With each challenge, humanity grew sharper, faster, more dangerous. Every new weapon the empires built was stolen, studied, and turned back against them. The galaxy had hoped to trap Earth, but instead Earth was evolving in war. Human commanders began to whisper to their crews a truth that spread like fire: every battle only made them stronger. What had begun as defense was becoming something greater. Humanity was no longer fighting only to survive. They were beginning to understand their destiny. In one hidden command chamber deep within a dark matter fortress, a human admiral stood before his officers. His voice was calm but carried the weight of history. "They thought we were weak," he said. "They thought we would kneel. But every strike they make only teaches us more. We bend their traps, break their machines, tame their monsters. They fear us now, and they should. Because we are not only surviving. We are becoming inevitable." Across the galaxy, the truth was undeniable. Empires that once laughed at Earth now trembled at the mention of its name. Their fleets were scattered, their secret weapons destroyed, their pride shattered. Planets under their rule began to rise, inspired by the stories of human victories. Slaves whispered of freedom, soldiers questioned their masters, and rebellions lit fires on worlds that had been silent for ages. Humanity had become more than a threat. They had become a symbol, a storm rising across the stars. The turning point had come, and the galaxy could feel it. No matter how many fleets they built, no matter how many weapons they unleashed, they could not stop the hunters of Earth. The age of empires was breaking, and in its place a new power was rising from the shadows. Humanity had turned the tide of war, and the galaxy knew there was no going back. The galaxy had always believed its rulers were eternal, that the great empires would last forever, their fleets and armies unbreakable, their banners never falling. For thousands of years, species lived and died under their control, chained by fear and tradition. But now the chains were breaking. Humanity's war spread like fire through the stars, and one by one the empires that had once seemed invincible began to fall. It started with whispers, colonies refusing to send tribute, soldiers questioning orders, slaves daring to rise in rebellion. The rulers tried to crush these sparks, but their fleets were shattered, their confidence gone. Everywhere they turned, the shadows of humanity struck. One Serkan stronghold after another fell in silence, its defenders slaughtered before they even saw their enemy. The ZHYR, once proud in their wings of living shadow, found their homeworld surrounded by dark matter fleets that could not be tracked. Their empress screamed orders, but her voice never reached the galaxy again, her palace cut from existence in a single strike. Even the Kroll machines, who believed themselves beyond fear, faced despair when their logic failed. They had calculated 1,000 ways to defeat humanity, yet every prediction ended the same, with their own destruction. Entire machine fleets deactivated themselves rather than face the hunters again, their cold minds choosing silence over annihilation. As the empires collapsed, the galaxy's forgotten voices began to rise. On slave worlds, chains were shattered. On conquered planets, banners of rebellion flew. And everywhere, the name of Earth spread as both terror and hope. To the rulers it was a nightmare, but to the oppressed it was salvation. They spoke of humans not as conquerors, but as liberators who had broken the pride of their masters. Cities long buried in despair lit fires of freedom, their people joining the storm. Humanity had not asked for followers, but followers came all the same. Each victory against the empires inspired 10 more worlds to rise. The collapse was unstoppable. The Serkan Dominion was the first to die, its fleets wiped out, its warlords slain, its throne world burning in silence. The ZHYR followed, their empire broken by rebellion and shadow fleets that struck without mercy. The Kroll machines fractured, their great intelligence cores hacked and torn apart, their once eternal voices silenced forever. The High Council chamber, once the heart of galactic power, grew empty. Seats that had been filled by rulers for ages now stood vacant, their owners dead or in hiding. The banners of ancient empires that had stretched across the stars were nothing but ashes drifting in the void. For the first time in history, the galaxy had no masters. In the ruins of their power, silence spread, broken only by the whispers of humanity. Fleets of dark matter warships moved without challenge, appearing over worlds that once trembled under alien rule. Some planets surrendered at the sight of them, others welcomed them with cheers. Everywhere they went, the galaxy bowed, whether in fear or gratitude. To the oppressed, the collapse of empires was a dawn. To the rulers who still survived, it was a nightmare they could not escape. They had mocked Earth as weak, yet Earth had destroyed everything they built. Their arrogance had turned into ashes, their centuries of dominance erased in mere decades. Humanity had not only survived, they had remade the galaxy. The collapse was complete, but the future was uncertain. Would the humans rule as new emperors, or would they guide the galaxy into freedom? No one could yet say. All that was known was this: the galaxy no longer belonged to its old masters. The chains were broken, the thrones empty, and in the silence that followed, one truth remained: humanity had become the storm that ended empires. The galaxy was silent. The empires that had ruled for millennia were gone, their fleets shattered, their thrones broken, their voices lost in the void. Where once banners of domination flew over countless worlds, now only ashes drifted in the cold of space. The High Council chamber, once filled with rulers who believed themselves eternal, stood empty. Dust gathered on the great seats, silence echoing where once armies had been commanded. In this silence, only one power remained. From the shadows came the warships of Earth, their hulls cloaked in darkness, their outlines impossible to see. They glided through the void like ghosts, unstoppable and silent. To the galaxy they were no longer a rumor, no longer a whisper. They were reality. And now, with the fall of the empires, all eyes turned to humanity. Across freed worlds, people cheered, their chains broken, their rulers gone. They looked to Earth as saviors, as liberators who had done what no other species dared. But in the hearts of others, fear grew deeper than ever. If humanity could destroy the oldest empires, what would they do next? Would they rule with iron and fire, replacing one tyranny with another? Or would they guide the galaxy into a new age? No one knew, and that mystery was more frightening than war itself. In the center of the galaxy, where the High Council chamber once ruled, a single human warship appeared. It did not glow with light or sing with energy like the fleets of old. It was silent, invisible to sensors, a shadow among shadows. And yet every eye felt its presence, every world knew it was there. From that ship, a message spread across the stars. It was not long, not filled with threats or promises. It was simple, carried in a human voice, calm and steady. Earth does not kneel. The age of empires is over. The future belongs to humanity. The words echoed from system to system, reaching every world, every people. Some fell to their knees in fear. Others raised their voices in hope. Across the galaxy, the new reality was clear. The old order was gone. Humanity stood upon the throne of the stars. But the throne was not made of gold or jewels. It was made of silence, fear, and the promise of what would come next. Human leaders gathered in secret chambers, debating their path. Some argued for conquest. "We are strong," they said. "We have destroyed our enemies. Let us rule and shape the galaxy under our command." Others spoke with caution. "We fought for survival," they reminded. "We did not seek to become emperors. If we rule with iron, we will become what we destroyed." The debate raged, but the galaxy heard none of it. All they saw were the hunters in the void, warships that could not be seen or stopped, and they knew that the decision rested in human hands alone. For the first time in history, the galaxy's fate was not shaped by ancient empires, but by a young species once mocked as weak. Whispers spread again, but this time they were different. No longer whispers of fear alone, but whispers of destiny. Some called humanity monsters, others called them saviors, but all agreed on one truth: they could not be ignored. On a distant world, once a slave planet under the Circan dominion, a child looked up at the stars and asked his mother if the humans would come. She smiled, tears in her eyes, and answered, "They already have." In another corner of the galaxy, a surviving warlord hid in the shadows of a broken fleet, vowing revenge. But even he knew his words were empty. No army could stand against the hunters. The age of defiance was over. As humanity's fleet spread, securing the galaxy, silence followed them. Planets surrendered without resistance, rebellions offered allegiance, and even the last remnants of the old rulers bent their knees. Humanity had become the center of everything. Yet their greatest test was not in battle, but in what came after. Would they choose mercy or conquest? Would they guide the galaxy to freedom, or hold it in chains of their own making? The galaxy waited in silence, holding its breath. Above them all, the dark matter warships drifted like shadows, watching, guarding, deciding. And in that silence, one truth echoed louder than all others. The galaxy trembled, and it would never stop trembling again. For the hunters of Earth had taken the throne of the stars, and the future, whether of light or of fire, belonged to humanity.